Welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and so great to have you with us. Always a joy to be with you, to talk to you about what's happening in our world today as it relates to end time prophecy, to create within us a great sense of urgency and anticipation at the coming of Jesus Christ. What I want to talk with you today about is some very important, I think, some major prophetic implications of the recent runoff election in Turkey. There was a runoff election there that happened on May the 28th, and the president there, who served 2 terms, President Erdogan, has been elected now to a 3rd term. And I think that's very significant in light of Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, the Gog Magog invasion. Here in a bit, we'll go and answer some questions. There's a couple of really good questions that we have in the subscriber section about marriage in heaven. A couple of questions. One man says he's been divorced, and what will the relationship be with his wife in heaven? Another question about someone who's been divorced several times, and kind of about marriage in heaven and family in heaven. So those are fascinating questions that we all wonder about. And then a really important question. Someone asked, after the seal judgments and the bowl judgments and the trumpet judgments in the book of Revelation, how's the world going to be restored and cleansed during the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ? Basically, the world's ecology is going to be destroyed, especially with those bowl judgments in Revelation 16, right at the end of the tribulation period. So where does the Bible talk about things being restored during that period of time? So we'll answer those questions when we get into the subscriber section. But again, what I want to talk about today is I told my wife earlier, I thought about calling this program, Let's Talk Turkey. We want to talk about Turkey and this runoff election there that I think, again, has some really major implications for Bible prophecy. Recep Erdoğan has been the president of Turkey, served 2 terms. And he was just reelected May the 28th to a 3rd term in a runoff election. And he was running against a very much more moderate pro-Western candidate. He won 52% to 48% in that runoff. Now, of course, this election was not completely fair. It wasn't a completely fair fight because Erdogan has near total control over Turkey's broadcast media. So he got all kinds of exposure. His opponent got very little. Erdogan also took advantage of governmental resources to hand out millions and millions of Turkish lira, their currency, to their citizens. He also raised the minimum wage several times over the last few months, basically, bribing people to vote for him. And he gave free gas to all the households in Turkey through May. So he used the levers of power that he had to get reelected, but he only won by 4%. A couple of things about what's happening in Turkey today. Turkey's economy is in shambles. There are parts of the country as well that are still recovering from that catastrophic earthquake earlier this year down in the southern part of Turkey. If you know anything about Turkey's economy, they've had crippling inflation. Think about this. Since 1999, the inflation in Turkey has been 5,500%. If you go from 1999 to today. In fact, just here recently, right before the election, the inflation rate has slowed down to just 44%. Now think about that. We've had 5-8% here in our country and seen how it's affected us. Years ago, when I was in Turkey one time, several years ago, I've been there many times, but this was back before the new currency was brought in 2005. I brought home a paper currency from there. It was 1 million lira. And my boys were little at the time. I showed them, this is 1 million Turkish lira. It was only worth a few dollars. They readjusted their currency in 2005, but they're still having runaway inflation there. Now, I believe that Erdogan's re-election there, though, has significant prophetic implications. Turkey is a major player in the end-time war of Gog and Magog. Now, in Ezekiel 36 and 37, that tells us about the regathering of the Jewish people to their land in the end times. I encourage you to read those chapters, tremendous chapters about God bringing the Jewish people back to their land in the end times. Now, we have witnessed that throughout the last several decades, starting in 1948. So that prophecy literally is being fulfilled before our eyes. So if the prophecies in Ezekiel 36 and 37 are being literally fulfilled as I speak, we can know that the prophecies in Ezekiel 38 and 39 will be literally fulfilled as well. And just this last month, Israel celebrated the 75th anniversary of the rebirth of the modern state of Israel. So here you have these prophecies of Israel being reborn, the 75th anniversary of that. Then right after that is Ezekiel 38 and 39 that talks about an invading coalition of nations that will come into Israel in the end times. We've talked about that a lot here on Marking the End Times, and Jimmy Evans has talked about that quite a bit as well on some of his programs. It's a very important prophecy. But in Ezekiel 38, 1 through 6, it gives 10 proper names there. The first name is Gog, who's the leader of the invasion. But the other 9 names are geographical locations. And 4 of those places, those ancient places mentioned in Ezekiel 38, are in modern-day Turkey. Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, and Togarmah. All 4 of those are in Turkey. So 4 of the 9 places that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38 are in the modern day nation of Turkey. So these 4 geographical locations are very important for Bible prophecy. Now, Turkey and Russia and Iran have been closing ranks and deepening their relationships with one another. That's really an end-time axis of evil, because in Ezekiel 38, you also have Rosh mentioned, who's Russia, Magog, which may be part of Russia or even Ukraine, and you have Persia mentioned, which is Iran. So 4 of the nations there mentioned are in modern-day Turkey. At least 1 or 2 are Russia, and the other one is modern-day Iran. And also, Turkey right now is deeply enmeshed in the civil wars in Libya and in Sudan. The other 2 nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38 are Put, which is modern-day Libya, and Cush, which is modern-day Sudan. So you have all of these nations here enmeshed with one another and in place. Now, Turkey's also a member of NATO. So they're kind of being pulled in 2 directions. But one of these days, Turkey, which kind of tries to play in favor of the East and the West, one of these days they'll have to make a choice. And the Bible says that in the end times, Turkey's going to end up as an ally of Russia and the other Islamic nations as they come against Israel in the end times. So Erdogan, he just got reelected, 3rd term. He's cementing his iron grip on power. He's been called the tyrant of Turkey. He's a classic political strongman. Now, what do we know about Recep Erdogan? Well, he was the mayor of Istanbul, the major city in Turkey, for many years. When he was mayor of Istanbul, he said this one time: democracy is like a streetcar. We ride it as long as we can, and then we get off. That gives you a little bit of a window into his thinking. You know, democracy is a good thing. You just kind of use it as long as you need to, and then you get off. He's the co-founder of the AKP party in Turkey, which is an Islamist party. He served 3 terms as prime minister of Turkey, and he was just elected for his 3rd 5-year term as president. He used an attempted coup back in 2006 to greatly increase his power, to dramatically increase his power in the nation. Now, it's interesting, as Erdogan was reelected, the first person to call to congratulate him on his victory was Vladimir Putin, who called him a dear friend. And following close behind was a call from the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi. Erdogan had huge support from Arab Islamists. One headline said this: Arab Islamists rally behind Erdogan in upcoming Turkish election deemed battle between Islam and unbelief. They say voting for him is a mandatory religious obligation, and they demonize his opponent. So people in the Islamic world were saying you have to vote for Erdogan because it's a battle between Islam and unbelief. Erdogan has stated clearly that he wants the rebirth of the Ottoman Empire. He wants to see the birth of a Turkish empire, and he believes that Turkey's destined to be a regional, even a global power in the 21st century. A German politician said this about Erdogan. He said, Erdogan wants to be a modern sultan. He wants to rule Turkey for life, and he wants to do it with an iron fist. She's an iron-fisted ruler. They're basically a dictator. NPR, in one of their articles in the wake of this election, said this: for the millions who voted against him, Erdogan is seen as an authoritarian. He's stacked the judiciary, monopolizes the media, and jails perceived opponents, including journalists and critics on social media. He's accused of allowing corruption to flourish, leading to shoddy, unregulated construction that collapsed in the earthquakes. He's replaced opposition mayors, even though they won local elections. So he puts people in power that he wants. So Turkey's kind of the nation here in the middle of this Gog Magog war. They're kind of in the middle, a NATO ally, but also an ally of Russia and Iran. But they're also allied with Turkey or with Sudan and Libya right now. They're involved in the civil wars in both of those countries. So when you look at Ezekiel 38 today, all 5 nations are in place: Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, and Sudan. Now, there may be more involved because it says many peoples with you, more Islamic nations involved. But we can clearly see here that with Turkey kind of in the middle of all this and playing all the sides, the coalition is forming. So I believe that this re-election of Recep Erdogan for another term as president of Turkey is just another piece of the prophetic puzzle that's falling into place for the coming war of Gog and Magog. Well, as always, again, thank you so much for watching. We're going to go to the subscriber-only section now and answer these questions about marriage and heaven. The question about what's going to happen with the renewal of the world when Jesus comes at his second coming for the millennium. How's the world going to be restored? So we'll answer those now as we go to our subscriber-only section. If you're not a subscriber, you can go to endtimes.com for just $7 a month, and you can become a subscriber and just have access to all kinds of great information.